What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Paulie Malignaggi. Paulie Malignaggi has permanently removed from Showtime broadcast team over race comments. Okay. Paulie Malignaggi's outspoken views have made him popular amongst boxing fans, but comments Malignaggi made 3 months ago on race during an interview with IFL TV has cost him his job as an analyst for Showtime. According to Boxing Scene's Keith Iddick, who was first to report the story, Malignaggi was eliminated from Showtime's broadcasting team because he refused a request from Viacom CBS to apologize for the comments. Malignaggi was responding to comments made from the 135-pound titleist Devin Haney, 24-0-15, who stated in April that he'd never let a white boy beat me. He probably wasn't talking about Vasily Lomachenko, Malignaggi said. I assume he was talking about Luke Campbell, who I think is the more viable opponent that Haney would be fighting. Malignaggi gave Haney the benefit of the doubt. When you're in your early 20s, you probably don't express that very well. It's not something that great to make race comment statements in 2020, especially with so many racial tensions in the world. Then Malignaggi said that dominance in boxing history and how throughout history has shifted via racial ethnic lines. He said this: boxing has its own course in history with certain demographics dominating more than others, right? Malignaggi said in a video, maybe like 100 years ago. Irish fighters were better, and then the Jews, and then the Italians came, and I think African-American fighters became most dominant in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Malignaggi, who retired, said, it's not great to have the race discussion because it's going to coordinate division, because it's no longer the time of African American anymore in boxing. Wow. See, let me counterpunch Paulie Malignaggi, okay? Paulie Malignaggi, first of all, he said Irish fighters are better, or were better than any other fighters, than black fighters. Then came Jews, then came Italians, right? He's Italian. Well, he's talking about 100 years ago. Okay, the turn of the century, of the 20th century, or yeah, Jack Johnson was the first black heavyweight. So how do you know who was better by race or not? If you're saying, oh, well, Irish fighters were better than black fighters, well, black fighters couldn't even fight white fighters. That was the problem. Okay? And I believe, honestly, there was a lot of black fighters that was better than Jack Johnson, but they never had the opportunity to compete the way they supposed to. Okay? But Jack Johnson got that opportunity. He crossed those borders. I think that him saying, oh, Irish fighters, then Jewish fighters, then Italian fighters, but then he says, oh, well, I don't want to go into the racial division or talk about race because it might divide. Well, that's exactly what you did. Okay, you used it as an example instead of to say, hey, well, these fighters had their own time regardless of race. You know, you had fighters that just happened to be Irish, happened to be Jewish, happened to be Italian. Okay? But that's not what he said. He said that African Americans, it's not their time anymore. Like, what the hell? And you want people to not talk about race and you say something like that. That's totally counterproductive. Okay? Because I know what he was trying to do. He's trying to paint a story from the early times. Well, black fighters couldn't even fight those type of fighters back then. And when they did, they dominated. Facts. Okay? But that really doesn't matter, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to say that everyone, because they were a certain race, had a particular time and they were better just because they were that race. That's what people are going to see. Okay, and that's not the case at all. So, yeah, and here's the thing. He didn't get fired because he said those remarks. He got fired because he wouldn't apologize for them. So, I mean, hey, if his cockiness, his arrogance, his whatever, you know, got the best of him, oh, well, so be it. It did. And, you know, he should be fired because a lot of people have said things and then had to apologize having a certain position. Okay? You can't say certain things being a representative or for a network like Showtime. They're not going to let you do that. They're not going to let you commentate their fights when you saying, oh, well, it's not time for black fighters no more. Right? Yeah. I'm African American. It's no longer the time of African American anymore in boxing. Now, how would you make that saying? Why? Because Tyson Fury beat Deontay Wilder? Come on, really? So Deontay Wilder is the poster child for black fighters and black fighters only. You know what I mean? It would have been different people if he would have said, hey, maybe it's not a time for American heavyweights. No, he went African Americans. He didn't have to say that. That was totally unnecessary, on top of totally untrue. And what you've done, you have did exactly what you said you didn't want to do. You brought up race into these things in each and every topic that you were trying to make a point of. Absolutely. He should have been fired. And he's a good commentator. Don't get me wrong. You know, and I'm not calling him a racist. But I'm saying because he decided not to apologize, dude, you have to have some humbleness. And he had none. And he showed you. No, my arrogance overweighed my humbleness if he had any humbleness. He has intelligence because he knows the sport. But when it comes to him doing the right job the right way, he did not do that. And because that, Showtime fired him. Okay? Let me give you another example. Okay? Look what happened to Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao used to be sponsored by Nike. You guys remember that? And he said the bad, shrewd comment about homosexuals. What did Nike do? Dropped him. That's exactly what happens with because a company and a corporation or a corporation, network, what, etc. They will not have you being a representative for them making those type of statements. It just won't work. Okay? But anyway, that's my counterpunch on Paulie Malignaggi. You guys tell me what you think. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.